Hello and welcome to this video where I want to talk about midstream, upstream, and downstream in the oil and gas industry. The target audience of this video is people with no previous knowledge, and after you watch this video, you will know what these three things are. So this is just a way that most people divide the oil and gas industry. You can think of them as main stages or segments or components. And let's just figure out what stream typically means. So the dictionary says that a stream is a body of running water, such as a river or creek flowing on the earth, and also any body of flowing fluid, such as water or gas. So when it comes to the oil and gas industry, the stream part of up, mid, and down is referring to the flow of oil and gas. So as you can imagine, up, mid, and down are referring to different parts of the industry, but depending on um, like the flow of oil and gas. So the upstream will be where the flow starts, the midstream will be the midpoint of the flow, and then the downstream will be where the flow ends up. So you can kind of think of it in this way as well. If you have a tap, the upper part of the tap will be the upstream part. That's where it comes out first, and then the midstream is where it flows from the upper part to the downstream part where it's distributed, and then you have the downstream part, which is where everything is kind of ending up. So the oil and gas industry uses a lot of pipe, like a lot of pipelines. There's just pipes everywhere in general, and in the upstream part, the pipes are not, don't have that many pipes, and they're not that busy. Uh, and in the midstream part, they're generally fewer pipes, but they're much bigger. Then you come into downstream, which is what I'm showing right here, where you're just like pipes everywhere. That's just a general comment. There are exceptions, but typically, like the more pipes you see like this, the closer you are to the downstream part. Okay, so why are there so many pipes? And then there's two main reasons. It's cost and safety. Um, the absolute safest and cheapest way to transport oil and gas is using pipelines or pipes. So you can make up your own mind which one is the most important and it's driving the decision to use pipelines. But it doesn't really matter because it's safest and cheapest. Okay, so there are three parts: upstream, midstream, and downstream. Let's talk about like the part of the oil and gas industry that are contained within each. So on the upstream side, starting on the left, we got exploration for oil and gas, we have drilling for oil and gas, and we have production of oil and gas. So finding, making a hole down to it, and then having that oil and gas flow up the surface. When, for the most part, when the oil and gas is up at the surface, and maybe there's some very basic refining or very basic separation that goes on, then you're moving into the midstream section. So in the midstream, you're focused on transportation and storage. So there's not a whole lot like being done with the oil and gas in the midstream. It's just moving from the upstream part where it was extracted and to the downstream part will it be where it will be processed and made into a bunch of different products and distributed to everyone. So midstream, you will have transportation, which could be pipelines, trucks, ships, etc. And then you go into the downstream part, which is where you're refining products, you're processing oil and gas, and you're distributing these final processed products into a wide range of different markets and geographies. So another way of splitting this up would be to talk about 5 different stages. So you have oil production, which will be the upstream part. That's where oil or gas is made. Then you have transportation, which will be the midstream part, and then you have the 3 and 4 and 5 are all downstream. So you have refining and processing, transmission and distribution. Those 3 are all part of the downstream part of the oil and gas industry. So this would be a picture of upstream. This is an offshore installation where they are drilling and producing oil and gas. This is also an upstream, again, offshore facility. As you can see, there's a lot of pipe and stuff going on here. There's some very basic separation of the oil and gas when it first reaches, when it first, kind of enters, um, before it enters the midstream component. But there's nothing like the refining that happens in the downstream part of the industry. So it's just stabilizing the fluids and separating them at a basic level to make it easier to transport uh, from upstream to downstream through the midstream. Same here, just an offshore installation here for production of oil and gas. Same here. So these were all upstream offshore, and then this is what upstream would look like on land. So this is a land drilling rig that is drilling a well. There's no production going on at this time. The well is being drilled, but when the rig will move away, they'll hook up the pipes necessary and do any sort of stimulation that's required, and then they start producing. Okay, so move over to the midstream. This will be a picture of a midstream part. This is a pipeline in an Arctic area with permafrost. Then you have another picture of midstream, which would just be a truck that transports oil and gas, maybe between different storage facilities or from part of the upstream to the downstream. Another midstream is just a tank, just storage. That's midstream. And now we move into downstream. That's where the refineries come in. So refineries are in the downstream. They take in oil and gas products from midstream that was produced in the upstream part, and then they refine it into thousands and thousands of different products. And then after it has been refined, it gets stored and distributed to different end users around the world. So this is another picture of downstream, a refinery. Downstream, downstream, more refineries. Okay, test time. Time to check what we learned so far. So this is a truck. It is driving towards an oil refinery. The truck is not empty. It's full of oil. Which stage of the oil and gas industry is this operation? Is it 1, upstream, 2, midstream, or is it 3, downstream? I'll give you 5 seconds. Okay, so hopefully you have your answer. So this is midstream. Well, why is it midstream? Because it's midstream because it's transportation to a refinery, and the refinery is in the downstream part. So we can look at this. The midstream is transportation between upstream and downstream, and also storage. If we look at this view, the arrow points to this operation, a truck carrying oil and gas from the upstream part into the refinery part. So that's why it's midstream. Okay, this is another image of this. You have upstream here on the left, where you're extracting oil and gas from the ground, and then there's some very simple separation going on, and then it's put into pipelines and storage and trucks, and it goes into the downstream part where there's refineries and huge storage tanks and distribution networks. This is another image showing the same thing. So you have the upstream with production operations, then you have midstream with field processing, field pipeline gathering, long distance transport, storage. Then you have downstream with petrochemical manufacturing, which is what you think of when you look at a refinery. And then you have refining and markets and products and consumers of the products. Okay, so the next couple of slides, I'm going to go more into detail on upstream, midstream, and downstream in a little more dry way. I'm just going to read the text on the slides that describes them in more detail, and I'm going to end with a summary. Okay, so upstream, the summary is that it involves identifying and extracting crude oil and natural gas from the ground, and it involves exploration and production of raw materials. So a more detailed explanation of that will be upstream is the first part of the oil and gas process. It primarily involves the exploration for crude oil and natural gas fields, as well as its recovery and production. This sector is widely referred to within the oil and gas industry as the E&P stage, where E&P stands for exploration and production. Common areas within the upstream process include searching for oil deposits, either underground or underwater. Well, when they say underground, they mean, you know, or when they say underwater, it's always both underwater and underground because the oil and gas is not on the seabed. So when they say underground, it's under the ground from a land location. Then underwater, it's underground from an offshore location. Um, Let me start that one again. Common areas within the upstream process include searching for oil deposits either underground or underwater, the drilling of exploratory wells, and if deposits are found, the operation of these wells to bring found deposits to the surface. Upstream is a highly scientific area of oil and gas, with geologists and geophysicists involved from the outset to seek out where deposits may lie. Aside from these roles, potential jobs within the upstream oil and gas sector includes platform installer, petroleum engineer, pipeline engineer. Okay, midstream. So midstream involves moving and storing crude oil and natural gas, includes processing, storing, transporting, and marketing oil and natural gas, uses pipelines, trucks, rail, and tankers to move material, uses burner management and combustion control to heat pipelines and storage tanks. So midstream is the middle stage of the oil and gas process and focuses on the storage and transportation of the deposits found during the upstream stage. The most common method of transportation, known as piping or pipeline, involves vast networks of pipes being constructed and maintained to take the deposits downstream. Additional logistics include trucking, as well as the transportation via oil tankers and railway in order to complete distribution. Although the activities within the specialism are sometimes included as part of the downstream process, midstream is a vital link between the upstream and the downstream stages and worth considering in its own right. Jobs within the downstream sector includes chemical engineers, pump system operators, business administrators, and gas managers, as well as truck drivers, barge drivers, and other transportation positions. Downstream involves refining crude oil and natural gas into finished products, includes converting raw materials into products like gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, asphalt, and heating oil, involves distributing finished products into the marketplace. Details. Downstream is the final and most varied part of the oil and gas process. This could range from the refining of crude oil and processing and purifying natural gas, through to sales, marketing, product distribution and retail, and everything in between. It also includes the manufacture of petrochemicals and plastics. Many products derived from crude oil are manufactured during the downstream stage, including diesel oil, liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, petrol, fertilizers, antifreeze, pharmaceuticals, and even cosmetics. Downstream is undoubtedly the sector in the oil and gas industry that provides the closest connection to everyday consumers, meaning jobs in this sector are incredibly sought after and diverse. Typical roles involved within the downstream process includes, but are not limited to, hazard analysts, tax accountants, maintenance supervisors, and oil traders. So in summary, the oil and gas industry is divided into three main stages, segments, components, whatever you want to call it. So the upstream involves identifying and extracting crude oil and natural gas from the ground, and it includes exploration and production of raw materials. Well, the raw materials are, in this case, the oil and gas. Midstream involves moving and storing crude oil and natural gas, includes processing, storing, transporting, and marketing oil and natural gas, uses pipelines, trucks, rail, and tankers to move material, uses burner management and combustion control to heat pipelines and storage tanks. Downstream involves refining crude oil and natural gas into finished products, includes converting raw material, which is oil and gas, into products like gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, asphalt, and heating oil, involves distributing finished products into the marketplace. So that's what I want to talk about in this video. I've covered now upstream, midstream, and downstream. And hopefully you found this information helpful to you. Thank you for watching.